A warm welcome to each one of you. This is the Naomi Talk Show with yours truly, Liz Kinya, and I want to begin by appreciating each one of you that has become part of the big family that we are becoming, because we are growing every day, because you have chosen to make us grow by sharing our content, by even giving us suggestions on topics and areas that we can get to cover. And for sure, we want to say thank you. We are looking into each of your suggestions to make sure before the year ends we have covered as much as we can cover, because then this is a place where we equip you, we give you very educative sessions and stories that also inspire you to be able to do life the way God intended. So today we are looking at a very interesting topic. So before I say what the topic is, I want you to go grab a notebook, a pen, ukae mahali pamenyamaza, pametulia, so that we can flow together. Tuko pamoja? Very good. Today we are talking about post-traumatic stress disorder. Ushaisikia kitu kama hiyo? Ushaikutana na mtu anapitia such moments, or you're not even sure what is happening? Because life sometimes will throw us into moments and situations where we go through excess trauma, distressful moments, and we don't know how to navigate in that space. So today we are privileged to have a lady with us who is going to walk us through the journey of PTSD, in short form, for post-traumatic stress disorder. Karibu sana.
Thank you.
Kindly introduce yourself and tell us more about yourself.
All right, so my name is Kinya, Gitonga. Majority know me by Kinya Gitonga. I am a psychologist and I'm also an author to 4 books which create awareness on the existence of mental health related issues. And I'm also a very active mental health advocate where I offer counseling and also sensitization programs when it comes to mental health related issues. And lastly, I practice at the University of Nairobi as a counselor.
Wow. This girl, by the way, I'm at surprise. Umesikia, she's an author. She has authored 4 books. One is not here. Strong from Within, a very good book that you need to get. But then she's very young. Very young, I can assure you. Gen Z, you can identify. Happiness is yours to give. That's the second book. And then there's this one, African Daughter, in Her Memory. This one you also need to get. And the 4th one?
The House of Anger.
The House of Anger. The choice is yours not to learn. Otherwise, the information is out here. First and foremost, before we get to the topic, I appreciate the fact that you're doing so much.
Thank you.
At such a tender age. What's your inspiration to keep writing?
My major need to keep writing, it's a way of offering reference, because at times I hear that we offer counseling with Western theories, but then the writings are in a Kenyan context that we can all relate to. So the first thing is creating awareness on mental health related illnesses, and the second thing is to young people, trying to inspire them to tap in their capabilities. You don't have to be good at your hobby or your talent when you're 40 or 30. Whatever age you are in, you can start tapping in your creativity and your talents, and you can utilize them. Yeah.
So you're practically a busy person, a busy girl. And we really appreciate this. For every young person, as she says, tap into that thing, that gifting, that skill that you need to keep sharpening. Sio kwanza kuamka at 40, badala ya kwenda kurusha mawe and all that kind of stuff. It is good to search within and be able to tap into that which God has given you. So to our topic today, Kinya, what is post-traumatic stress disorder?
So post-traumatic stress disorder, also majorly known as PTSD, it's a characteristic of a mental health disorder, but this particular one majorly, it affects individuals after experiencing certain events, and these events are characterized by trauma or probably distress. So these events vary from one person to the next. For instance, if someone has had an accident, a major one, or maybe they experienced rape, they could have experienced neglect or abuse. They are major events which really affect an individual. But not only having experienced them, we also say that PTSD can be developed by witnessing.
Okay, so if I witness, like for example, I witnessed a grisly road accident, something like that.
Yes.
Domestic violence. I'm a
Yeah.
child in this house where that is so much happening.
Yes.
So I can also become affected and graduate to this level.
PTSD, yes, you
Oh,
can. Yeah.
okay.
And I think it's one of the things that people do not understand, because maybe I was just a passerby and a building collapsed. So when I tell someone I'm feeling traumatized by what has happened, na kwa nini unasikia hivyo na wewe haukukuwa hapo kwa hiyo building? Yeah, so we have to understand that you can experience or you can witness, but both individuals are prone to experiencing PTSD.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So witnesser, be also careful, because what you saw can really be traumatizing to go through. So I'm sure as a person comes to you and they're telling you they feel traumatized, their symptoms probably you look out for. But before we address the symptoms, might we also be dealing with, probably, I'm thinking, a generation that is too fragile, because these things were not there previously, or they were there and we didn't know the names
Yeah.
to place on them. So is it that we're having also a very fragile generation, or ama ni nini? What do you think?
We can say previously hizi vitu zilikuwa hapo. It's just that we were not so keen to detail. But then again, we are also in a generation where we lack resilience. So especially when we say they are fragile, it's just that they lack resilience, especially during the tough times. You find a lot of them are cramping, or maybe they do not know how to cope around it. Yeah, so I think what we need to really equip them with are resilience skills, because in as much as something traumatic has happened, you can address it and move past the same. But most of us want to own that particular instance. So unasikia mtu akisema unajua mimi nakuanga traumatized. They want to own that particular disorder, whereas we can address it and move past the same. Yeah.
So ukienda mahali upate, for example, I just want to pick an example. What some of these young people say was they were traumatized. You go to a place or you get married and you realize hakuna tap water. So you've got to go to the river. Hakuna stima kwa hiyo kijiji. So unangangana na taa na kuni and all that, and then they come and say, oh gosh, I was so traumatized. So are we at that level? Ama hiyo ni
It happens to some, but they need to learn. Uzuri wa behavior is
really,
something
hiyo
you
inaweza
can...
tufikisha hapo kwa post-traumatic disorder?
It cannot, but this is where we are seeing a lot of people misusing terms.
Yes,
Hata ukiuliza
exactly.
mtu kwaja na kuambia I'm depressed. Whereas maybe it's something, it's a stress sign. Stress is kawaida, but it doesn't mean that it has to lead to depression.
Yes.
And then we also have to not own illnesses as young people.
Ay, hallelujah. Don't own them that early. So ukienda uolewe kwa boma haina stima, wacha kutuambia uko traumatized. Hallelujah. Naona my crew is laughing at the back there. So we were looking at when someone comes to you and you have to look out for the signs and symptoms. You can highlight to us some of the signs and symptoms that probably someone can be on the lookout.
Right. So whenever we're looking at signs and symptoms of PTSD, also trauma in general, one of the common things which you can tell are memories. Because kitu inaweza kuwa ilifanyika 10 years ago, but some things could trigger you to remember. For example, if it was a road accident, utapata if maybe this person is using a vehicle or they're in the road. At times if there's speedy driving or maybe there's reckless driving, they're always triggered to remember. So one of the key pointers could be intrusive memories, that's what we call them, whereby most of the times you feel like you don't have control and they keep on coming back. Then the second thing could be flashbacks, whereby most of the times you can recall once in a while, and there could be also issues with recurrent dreams. This is because if it's something that happened and it wasn't addressed, we say that it is suppressed or repressed in your unconscious. So most of the times, unconsciously it triggers back to us as dreams. That's what we interpret them psychological wise. And then again, we also look at your behavior in general, because if you're looking at a mentally well person, socially, emotionally and psychologically they are fine. But then if there is some disorder somewhere, you find there are changes in their sleeping patterns, there will be changes in their eating patterns, and then also how they interact with people generally will be somehow not very okay. This will also be characterized by changes when it comes to moods, whereby you find maybe they were just okay, but something has happened and it has triggered their mood, so they change way easily. But then again, I might be not having appetite today, or I might have a bad night today, and it doesn't mean that I am traumatized. When we're looking at these changes, we look at the intensity. For how long has it been happening? Because mood changes happen, at times we lose appetite because of this and that. And then again, also how recurrent it has been. So maybe at the count of 14 days, what has been happening, so that we can look at how intense it is and how often that happens.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we're talking of memory, and then flashback, recurrent dreams, general behavior like the eating, the sleeping patterns, the moods, and also you consider for how long that has been happening. That way you're able to tell now we're having a problem and not just something to brush away. Because, well, you can go sit for an exam and you chew a blackout, utoke hapo ukilia, alafu the next thing you have sleepless nights.
True.
For a whole 2-3 days. And obviously, well, the next word to use is, I'm traumatized. So it's also good to let us know some of those episodes of life, and we need to build some muscle on them and be able to, as you said, build some resilience. So before we even look at the risk factors, what do you think are some of the ways that can be done for people to build resilience? Wasifike hiyo mahali ya everything is traumatizing. The exam, traumatizing. Niliona blackout, traumatizing. Somebody becomes sleepless. I've had even some going through the motions, they start even vomiting. All triggered by the fact that you went into the examination room, it was too hard, you started crying, chewed the blackout, went all through the motions. So what are some of the things that can be done to build that kind of resilience?
So when we're looking at resilience, it's a behavior. And I love reminding people that behavior is something you can learn, you can unlearn, and you can learn something new. So for an individual or a young person who doesn't have resilience, it means they can unlearn that and learn resilience. But how do we do it? One of the things we need to work on is our mindset and perception. Because if I perceive an exam as a threat, definitely our bodies will respond by also looking at it like some sort of an harm. That is where there will be the distress, there will be sweating, there will be anxiety. And of course, if you're stressed out psychologically, also you won't be able to concentrate. So also composing yourself to write that paper itakuwa zero. And then also now the recall, remembering what you've learned, will also be chaotic because the body is really focused on that particular danger. So one of the things that we need to do is work on how we perceive things and our mindset. And then the second thing is preparation. Not only when it comes to exam, but also life in general. There are instances when we need to prepare ahead. And then again, embracing failure. We are in a generation where we really worry that something won't work out. We do nothing about it, and if it doesn't work, we also worry. But then if we prepare in advance, it means somehow we will be prepared for that. But also, it might not work as we wanted, and that's not the very end. So what is it that we are learning from that particular instance? So that also taps into positivity, having a positive mindset. In that I tried that particular paper, niliona blackout, but next time what do I need to do? So it's more of, yes, I failed, but what lessons am I picking from that? Then the other thing is self-awareness, because if you look at majority of the mental health illnesses, if we are self-aware enough, we will be able to tell, this is how I respond if I am stressed up, this is how I respond if I am anxious. Then if you are aware enough to know even you want to feel, and this is how my body responds, you'll be able to counter that response. Because you will tell, if I feel nauseated, or if I feel anxious or sweaty, this is what I do so that I don't get to that. And then of course, you will also be able to identify which coping mechanism do I use. Because coping mechanisms a lot, and there's what which can work for me, and there's that which won't work for me. So you have time to try journaling, you'll have time to try speaking out to a person, or maybe to try physical exercise, and you can identify which easily works for me. So that now if I know this situation could be stressful, this is how I respond, and this is now when my body is reacting, this is what I do. Yeah, it's a process, but it's a behavior which if you learn, it's easier to use.
But still I'm looking at, you are not yet a parent, but you've been parented, and you've interacted with both the generations.
Yeah.
Let's say the millennials and the Gen Z, there's a big difference in terms of the coping mechanism and, you know, all that kind of thing. So do you think parenting contributed or has contributed to the Gen Z not being able to cope very well with stressful situations?
Yes, it has hugely, because a lot of things that we do as adults, we all tap down to our childhood experiences and how we grew up, and also that particular environment. So for parents also, they need to be aware that whatever they do and how they bring up these children, because also of modeling, you may not be doing it directly, but children observe and they model behavior. So it also contributes a lot. Because also if someone walks into me for counseling, I'll also walk down the route of how did you grow up, how was it, this and that, so that I learn what are those behaviors that were picked in their childhood, which are now directly affecting them, even without them knowing. Yeah.
So which would be the best recommended parenting model before we get to the risk factors? The helicopter? Which is the best?
There are several.
To be able to build a child who has some muscles.
There are several parenting styles which range from the authoritarian, authoritative, and parents could have all those models in them, also due to the personality aspect. But then it's important for parents to have a middle ground, whereby you let children be themselves, but then also they need to be boundaries. So that in as much as they are learning from you and they are also exploring on their own, they know this is not what I can do. And then again, there's also psychoeducation, whereby you may really not want what they are doing, but then you don't let them just do it. You psychoeducate them, where you tell them the dangers of this, the dangers of that, then they choose. Naturally, these will build their decision-making skills, because they'll be able to weigh and think critically. When it comes to also creative thinking, they'll be able to borrow. And the beauty of it is that it generates a sense of responsibility. Because if you tell a child, don't do this, they may want to do it and see why. But if you tell them, don't do this because of this and that, they'll be able to have a sense of responsibility, even as they are making decisions.
Well, Kinya, I have to let you know that during our time, when the parents say don't,
It was don't.
you don't ask why.
Yeah.
You simply don't. So times have really changed.
They have.
So risk factors, which ones are they?
When you're looking at the risk factors in regards to PTSD, there are also several, and one of the things could be environment. Because the environment which the young people of our generation are calling it toxic. Maybe environment.
That's another thing that I'm yet to understand. I have come to know toxic when I'm in my late 30s. Toxic, and I'm wondering, I mean, where were we growing up? That all of a sudden, the environments can be toxic.
So toxic environment, at times we may misuse the word, but generally it means an environment that is not that friendly when we're looking at wellness. Maybe there could be abuse in that particular environment, because right now abuse is not only physical abuse, it could be emotional abuse, it could be verbal abuse, and also environment where there is neglect, particularly to children. A lot of parents do not really know that them being present emotionally is a thing. We like, kama tuna provide chakula, sasa nini ingine?
Uchumi ni ngumu. We have to all of us go.
Yeah, I understand. But that you being emotionally present, it's very important. And then there are also environments where children naturally work or two. There's no one to be there for them. There's no one to support them in the financial aspect. So that is also neglect. And also maybe if there is exposure to probably greasy accidents, maybe there are natural disasters which no one ever planned for. Those are also risk factors which could predispose someone to PTSD. But then they are different from one person to the next. Yes.
Toxic. So I had someone say a guy forgot her birthday. She swallowed that. And the guy did not respond to a message that she needed him to respond, lakini ime blue tick, and then they decided to have a coffee date and the guy comes late. So out of that, the girl decides to walk out of that relationship because it is toxic. So now I'm looking at toxic environment, toxic relationship. Tuta survive.
Did she find out why he came late?
You know, those are the things that I'm saying. The muscle is not there. The resilience is not there. Nobody wants to dig in and find out why this is happening. So, another 10 years, we'll have another definition of something else, and people keep on jumping in and out of relationships, calling them toxic for no reason. Because if someone forgot your birthday, I don't think that person is toxic.
Yeah, I think the very first thing that we need to learn is communicate. Because communication is very key when it comes to mental health related illnesses. Because if you keep on making assumptions, you're also injuring your wellness. So it's important to want to find out why is it that he forgot? Why is it that he didn't respond? Other than just concluding things.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're talking about the risk factors. You talked about the environment, the way, some children can be neglected, they have no support, and the exposure they get. Anything else to the risk factors?
Those are the major.
Those are the major ones.
Yeah.
Okay, so for the children in our homes, do you think the birth order affects how they respond to stress?
Yes.
If you're a firstborn, a middle child, or a lastborn, does it affect?
It really does, because when you're looking at mental health related illnesses, remember we said we walk you down the history of how you grew up and all that. So there's what we call family history. And family history, we look at how many are you in your family and which born are you. Because if we look at how the firstborn responds to crisis, how the second, the middle child and the lastborn responds, it's way different. Very different.
Firstborn, how do they respond to stress? In your analysis, having interacted with them?
When you look at firstborns, when it comes to ending crisis, there might be some outcome. Because at the end of the day, if you look at a lastborn who is delegating a duty and did not do, there's some firstborns who might do it to cover up for them. At the end of the day, the mother will ask, "Akufanya kwa nini ukiwa hapa?" So they somehow tend to absorb everyone and everything around them. But then, in as much as it's really benefiting the outsider, they forget about me. So when it comes to stress, yes, they may respond well, but they also need some me time for themselves and also some self-care routines for them. When you look at the lastborn, it could be easier because they somehow attract everyone's attention. So if they are stressed
and they get away with very many things. So they are more prone.
They are not prone to stress because they just say it. Unajua sasa una stress kwa nini na mimi last one. They are expressive a lot. And when you're looking at mental health disorders, you're speaking out to in as much as it could be a joke, it could be attracting attention, it assists. Because at the end of the day, what we do not want is you repressing and suppressing the emotions. It does more harm than good.
So a firstborn can repress and suppress?
Yes.
Which is not the case with a lastborn.
Yes.
So a firstborn is more prone to going through the stress disorders than a lastborn. What about the middle children?
The middle children, most of them, majority of them, they'll tell me as I was growing up, I was just there watching things. I'm now being more self-aware when I'm in high school or college, because a lot of them are paying attention to the firstborn who should be the role model, and then the one who's seeking attention near the last one. So the middle one is always unobserved, somehow lost. But as they're growing up, then they get to be self-aware. This is what I need to be doing. This is what I need to do, this and that. But then also for the firstborn, we really, and I personally want to remind them, we grew up knowing that you need to be a role model. But that does not mean you should be perfect.
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure on firstborns.
Yes.
That I would agree. To model the right things, to cater for the family, to manage, quote unquote, be the family manager, deputize your parents. Wow, yeah, so I agree. I think because I'm a firstborn, the pressure is real.
Yeah. So we remind them, before you are firstborn, you are human. And that means you can make mistakes and you have a life of your own. So you should not feel that compelled to be there for everyone. Yes, you need to be, but then what about you? Are you there for yourself? Because if you are not, your cup will run out empty and you cannot keep on pouring what you don't have. Yeah.
Wow, okay. So take care of yourself. Self-care is important.
Very.
That's basically what we are saying. So for anyone going through post-traumatic stress disorder, what are some of the treatment methods that are available?
So when we look at PTSD, it has several levels.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they could be what we call acute, they could be chronic, and at times there's a comorbidity whereby it could be PTSD, but it could be other mental health related illnesses. Because at times we find that a lot of mental health illnesses, they almost have similar signs and symptoms. So it needs some time to you actually to figure out it's just PTSD or it's PTSD and the client also has anxiety in it. And then there is also what we call vicarious trauma, where we mentioned it for someone who wasn't on a particular scene, but they saw it. So when it comes to the acute or maybe the mild, it's just something that could be handled with counseling alone. And then when it comes to counseling, I'm also wondering what our viewers think counseling is, because I know a lot of us will shy away from counseling when you want to imagine it's you being blamed, judged and all that. But for counseling, really it's a professional facilitating change in a certain aspect in your life, especially for adults and as the young adults. We are learning a lot of things. A lot of us are experiencing first time experiences and they do not know how to go about it. So whenever we are talking about counseling, it's just someone professional guiding you and facilitating change. So for someone who is working on learning communication or learning anger management, and for someone who is learning to deal with a traumatic experience, it's all learning. So do not feel like I really have a sickness, or it's a whole disorder, I'm way different from so and so. Not really. It's only that them, it's communication or it's anger management, and for you, you're dealing with something that happened previously. So when it comes to the mild one, counseling can do, but at times when it's chronic, we have to do a combination of medication and counseling. Because if you only do counseling and you are not at the right state of mind, you may not be able to digest the strategies and everything happening.
That's at the chronic level?
Yes, when it's now chronic or severe. Yeah, so we first start you with medication. When you're stable enough psychologically, then we can bring on board counseling, so that now we can merge both. And there's also instances where certain mental health illnesses need hospitalization, where you need to stay in an hospital setup for some time, and then later we can let you probably now operate as an outpatient. But then, for us to get to that extent, we won't look at your signs and symptoms and want to assume that it's PTSD. We have to do assessment. With this assessment, then we can be able to tell the level that you are at and what we need to do. Yeah.
Wow, okay. And the mild, because we have, you say this chronic, there is mild, and there is, let me refer, acute.
Yeah. So whenever we're looking at acute and the mild, so you can say it ranges from acute to mild. Then for mild, we can look at probably an interaction between mild and the severe or the chronic. So it depends with the ranges, because after you've done assessment, we get it as a level of numbers. We can say it 18 to 21, 21 to this and that. They'll be able to guide us in the treatment and the interventions. Yeah.
Okay. Sawa. So for anyone who probably knows someone around them who needs help, what are some of the things you can help them with to be able to reach out to that friend, to that neighbor who they feel needs help before they can even get to a counselor?
So now to that particular person is now the caregiver. So what one needs to know first is what we call trauma-informed care. Because I'm really speaking particularly for them who witnessed.
Yes.
Because if a building collapses when I'm in my apartment and I'm watching it, you hear someone says, "We anajisumbua tu bure." So one of the things we need to learn is what we call trauma-sensitive care, where this person is really affected. In as much as, yes, we're looking at individuals who at times could misuse these terms, there's someone who is generally affected.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we can do is unconditional positive regard, whereby you're trying to reason with them from the level they are. You do not understand what they are facing, but you can imagine how they are feeling. So one of the things is what we call you being there for them, offering unconditional positive regard. Then the next thing is now the culture sensitive ways of handling people, because we all have different cultures. There's how we grew up. Maybe in our culture we need to be tough even as women, and there's someone else who grew up in a culture where certain things shouldn't be bothering you. So if I speak out and tell you that I'm feeling this and that, it's good for you to be sensitive enough to validate what I'm feeling, because also people are different, and something could really mean a lot to me and it may not mean something else to someone. Or maybe you're expected to heal and move on past that. Because at times if you look at trauma, events could happen maybe where someone loses the investment, maybe in that experience they lost a loved one. So also loss at times comes into play. And we expect them to have moved on. From 2007 you lost your mom, you need to have moved on. Now you're in 2024.
Actually that's what we tell you. By the way, if you don't move on, you will die. So pick up your pieces and move on. Sasa unakaanga ukililia nini? You know, that we become a little bit insensitive.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So it's good for you to be sensitive and also be patient with this person. I also give an example of a child who is learning to cycle without training wheels. There's a child who will learn in 3 days. There's a child who will take 3 weeks. There's a child who will take 3 months. Same thing to these life experiences. Someone may move past that very fast. There's someone who will take some time, and there's someone who will take a longer time. But we can support them by offering emotional support. You can also offer material support. This is where you can get counseling. This is where you can talk with so and so. So those are things that you as a caregiver, you need to learn to do. But then of course there's now what I have mentioned, emotional support, whereby you're just there for that particular person. At times a lot of them are really feeling overwhelmed with emotions. They just need someone to talk to. At times you may not even have the solutions, and you do not need to struggle to have the solutions. You only need to be there emotionally present for this person. And the next thing, let us learn to listen.
Learn to listen.
Yes.
Hapo ndio challenge iko.
That's the challenge, because a lot of us are just seated until the other person somehow feels ignored, because maybe you are on your phone. I know for us women we believe we can multitask, but then when someone is really talking out to you about something bothering them, it takes a lot of energy. So if they feel ignored or not heard, they're not likely to open up again. But then if we are actively there, even the way we just sit, and the non-verbal cues, they communicate a lot. So if you're present, listening to them, they'll feel the environment is receptive. And if again they have an issue, they will come back. So it's important we not only just sit there, but we listen and we hear. And then again, whatever we hear should not be used against this particular person years later, and it should not move out of that setup. That's what we call confidentiality.
Hiyo ni ingine ngumu sana. Especially for women.
Yeah, because utasikia unajua neighbor wangu aliniambia alifanyika hivi na hivi na hivyo, and then whoever umutoda ataambia mwingine.
Siku hizi inakuanga pre-item. Especially tuombe Kinya. Haki zile vitu aliniambia. Alafu watu wanauza nini? You start now
telling them.
Alafu mnasomariza tutamwombea basi.
So we also need to, as caregivers, we need to take care of that because we are trying to create environment where someone can open up. And then the last thing is, a lot of them, if you tell me I have an issue right now, I'll be quick to defend myself. Si hivyo vile unafikiria. Leo tu nimefeel hivyo. But clearly, this is a problem. So one of the things that we need to do is encourage professional support. And as much as they may not buy it today, if you remind them tomorrow, they may be able to actually sit and reflect. Is it true that I've been acting this way and that way for a couple of days? Then if it's true, what can I do? I need to do this and that. Yeah.
Wow, this is a very, I hope your notebook umepindua hiyo page ingine umeingia kuandika, because today we are learning a lot and these are things that are affecting us sometimes. You know, someone going through the same, you may probably be going through the same, a friend, a neighbor, a sister, a brother. Life is happening and is happening in very tragic ways for many of us, and so we need to learn how to be there for them, be the caregivers that they need even before we can expose them to the professional support that is available. So Kinya, as we wind up on this one, what would be your closing remark concerning people going through post-traumatic stress disorder?
I think since I have talked to the caregiver, maybe I can talk to someone who is now experiencing trauma themselves. One of the things that we need to do is you be self-aware, now that you've known the signs and symptoms, so that you can be able to tell, this is what I do when I'm stressed up, or maybe if something triggers me. Because if you come for counseling and you tell me I've been experiencing memories of something that happened, this and that, I'll ask you, do you know, are you able to tell your triggers? What triggers you to remember? What triggers you to have the flashbacks? So it's important that you know, if I experience this event, this is what triggers me to remember. And if I remember, a lot of them will just freeze, a lot of them will recoil, come on the job one, and they don't want to talk anymore. So it's important that you know this is what triggers me, and now this is how I respond. If I respond in this particular manner, this is what I'm supposed to do. So for example, one of the easiest things that we can do in the moment of triggers is learning relaxation techniques.
Learn?
Relaxation techniques, yes. So these are things that will assist to ground you in the present and remind you that that is just a memory. It's not happening right now.
What are some of those relaxation tactics before we progress? One
of the relaxation techniques that we can use is breathing techniques, where we say you can breathe in, you can breathe out.
Vitu rahisi tu?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the other thing we can say...
breathe in kwanza? Breathe in. Breathe out. The camera crew should be doing these things with me. Breathe in. Breathe out. So they are relaxing now. They have learned a tactic that they were born knowing, but they didn't know it can
assist. Then the other thing is you can imagine your favorite color.
Oh.
Yeah, could be blue, could be black, whichever you love. Then you imagine a square, which is so full of these colors. So as you're thinking about it, a minute will elapse, which means you're thinking itakuwa you calm now.
I'm trying to, so I draw a square in my head or physically?
Yes, in your head.
Oh, okay.
Because at times it's maybe in a meeting someone has said something which could trigger you to remember an incident. So that is what you imagine. Now that square is so full of that particular color that you like.
My color is yellow.
Yeah.
So you say after 1 minute?
By the time 1 minute is here, you'll have calmed down. So that is also one part, the relaxation techniques. Then the other one is mindfulness, where in mindfulness you'll be able to hear yourself reacting. So you find, if maybe you have a rubber band, you can snap it. That sensation too, it will remind you you are in a meeting. Compose yourself. But then you won't be able to use this if you're not aware enough to know if so and so says this, it reminds me of this, and this is how I react naturally. So those are the few techniques that we can borrow, especially if you are in just a kawaida setup, maybe you're working, meeting and doing this and that. Then the other thing could be journaling for people who don't want to talk. At times I know we tell you to journal, we tell you to cry, we tell you to talk about it and you're wondering, why should I do that? The essence is if you write about it, you end up feeling better. If you talk about it, you end up feeling better. And also if you cry, you feel better because somehow I feel like our weight has been offloaded.
So better is happier.
Yes.
Getting a happier you.
Yes. And the essence is just letting out those emotions because you don't want you to suppress them. So whichever works for you, you can use it. Because again, we say there's what works for me, there's what works for you.
Do you see the shock in my face?
Yeah. Yeah. So you can choose whichever works for you. And then, of course, we look into the aspect of physical exercise because physical exercise will assist you when it comes to your thinking and also physically. It's very important. And sleep, which a lot of us young people, we are overlooking. Sleep is a very, very important component when it comes to general wellness because you get to recharge, you get to relax. If it comes to you being stressed up and making decisions, when you sleep, you end up feeling better. And then nutrition should be balanced. I know there's a lot of takeaways right now, but also nutrition plays a key role when it comes to wellness and emotional stability.
Actually, we've had a nutritional set and she has emphasized on the importance of eating a balanced diet.
It's very,
right from childhood.
very important.
But we start adopting good eating, healthy eating habits when we are in our 40s and 50s, which should not be the case.
Shouldn't.
Yes.
Yeah. So we need to really emphasize on you yourself now as adults because there's no one to remind us.
Yeah.
So we need to learn to have healthy eating behaviors. So those are among most of the strategies that we can use. But remember, these are coping strategies.
Coping strategies.
Yes. That means the underlying issue isn't addressed. So if you borrow from these coping strategies for some time and time again and the issue is recurring, you need now to go to a professional so that you can explore that particular area. And then you can be able to handle and process it so that it doesn't keep on occurring and recurring. Because if it keeps on happening, then your body goes into what we call tear and wear, and now you start progressing to physical illnesses. Like now the headaches become too severe. You could be having now issues with serious appetite, which will now also bring other illnesses. So whenever we're looking at PTSD and other mental health illnesses, it can also lead to physical health illnesses. Yeah.
Wow, okay. We have learnt a lot. And as we finish, there's something you've written about here that I would want to read.
All right.
Elizabeth Glaser says, sometimes in life, there is that moment when it is possible to make a change for the better. This is one of those moments. Happiness cannot be taught. Monaskia cannot be taught. As there is no one following us around to see if we put it into use, if we put into use the theories. But the good news is that it is an art to be learnt by putting into use skills which will make us happier. If you're looking for happiness, this is the book. This is the book. This is the book to look out for. She has authored 3 books, African Daughters. This one, all the daughters in the house have to buy. And of course, there is this Strong Within. And all of them are touching on something to do with wellness, mental wellness, and all that stuff. So thank you so much for making the time. We truly hope that the young people coming across this will be able to make assessment. Lakini tukimaliza, kuna vile tribe inachangia hiyo kitu hizo vitu za kasira hivi, post traumatic stress disorder. Sitaki kuita kasira, post traumatic stress disorder. I'm not trying to play tribal here, but do you think where one is born or where they come from like predisposes them and to being more prone to the same?
Yeah, and that is why to trauma we insist on offering trauma sensitive care. Okay. When you say about the trauma sensitive care, we also look at culture. Because different culture, different tribes will handle things differently. Okay. And there's how now the sons and the daughters in that tribe are expected to handle things.
Handle it that
yes. And it will also now contribute to the upbringing we're talking about. So it really contributes to PTSD and other instances.
Oh, sorry. Hii tunamalizia ukweli sasa. We've been finishing like pastors 3-4 times. We are come to the end of this show, and we truly hope that you've learned something. You can help a sister, a brother, a friend who is struggling with the PTSD condition. And as she says, the treatments are almost the same. The approaches to getting help are almost the same. So don't ignore that friend probably who is making a comment concerning something they witnessed, a scene they were involved in. Be careful to listen to them. Don't be judgmental. And then whatever they disclose to you, don't try to demean it and look like it is nothing. Listen to them and empathize with them. Otherwise, God bless you. See you next time.